swings, hits it high and deep and gone. Still going back. Out of here. Welcome to the big leagues.
Deep to center field, and it is gone.
Wow, his first big league swing is going to be a grand slam, a home run. Swing and drive. Mountain right. Welcome to the show.
And here's Tigers' top pitching prospect, Jackson Jobe, who has been looking sharp as can be over the last couple starts. I appreciate you taking the time on your off day here in between strong starts to kind of talk about what you've been doing out there, Jackson. Thanks so much for taking the time, man.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm excited.
So let's just start with the last couple starts, and we'll work back to the getting back off the IL and getting rolling, and even just your start to pro ball. But I got to start with what's happened recently, where I saw the data on some of those rehab starts. That was really exciting, but it's like, okay, that's one inning. But when you see you kind of stretch it out to 5 innings plus, and the stuff is just still staying upper 90s, you look nasty. The command is there. You look like a guy that never really hit the IL. How are you feeling right now? And, how awesome is it to have those 2 high A starts now under your belt where, you felt like Jackson Jobe?
Yeah, it feels great. It was probably 9 months since I had hit the mound. So it definitely feels good to be back. Definitely wanted to make up for some time that I lost, obviously missing almost half the season. So wanted to get off to a hot start, so I'm happy with where I'm at right now. I just want to keep being consistent and continue to keep getting better and continue to learn. But yeah, I feel like I've learned a lot throughout the process, and it feels good that I feel like it's starting to pay off a little bit, all the work. So.
What did you feel in that last start? Because you had the first high A start, against Fort Wayne, and you punched out 9. You looked solid. There were the 3 long balls that you scattered, and ultimately turned in a really solid start. But then the next start to just be lights out, 5 innings, a shutout ball, no walks, and 6 strikeouts. And between those 2 outings, you walk nobody. So the command has just been there. And that's something that we're going to talk about when we do the live breakdown. What stands out to me is even your misses are like good misses. There's not really a lot of non-competitive pitches. You just seem like a guy that really feels good right now. And what can you kind of speak to over the even those last 2 starts about what's kind of just gotten better and better for you, and to have that best start of the year being the most recent one?
Yeah, I think, like you said, the command is the biggest part, and even having my misses be competitive misses. And even going back to my first start in high A, where I did give up 3 home runs that had however many punchies, and went back with our coaches and tried to figure out what I could have done better and this and that. And, even some of those 2 out of 3 of the home runs were pitches that were out of the zone, right, and they just put really good swings on it. So it was kind of like just tipping the cap to them. They're a hot lineup the whole week. They put some good swings on some good pitches. So I really just try to not overthink it too much, and obviously no walks is good. So yeah, I'm around the zone. So I was like, I'm just going to take that into this next outing and continue to trust my stuff, and that's what I did. So I'm going to keep rolling with that mindset, and obviously there will be things to adjust down the road. But right now, I'm just trying to keep it simple, attack the zone with my best stuff, and kind of just go from there.
You talk about being on, between appearances on the mound, 9 months. That's a very, very long time, and not really having that opportunity to totally ease in. Like, I know the Tigers were relatively careful with you, but at the same time, it was awesome just kind of seeing you get those rehab appearances under your belt, and boom, not only are you pitching now more stretched out, but you're back up to high A where you were at points last year before you went down. When you kind of look at what you've been able to do so quickly, when did the command really start to click for you in terms of coming off the IL? Because I imagine, almost a year off, it's got to be a little while to get your body back in sync and everything. But even going back to those early rehab appearances, you weren't really walking anybody. So was that something that kind of came back in the bullpens? Did you kind of just feel refreshed almost after coming off the IL? What has allowed you to be around the zone and so consistent with such a big layoff and, a pretty unique injury with it being your back.
Yeah, so they took a pretty conservative route, as they should. Like, young guy coming out of high school, pitcher, like, you obviously know, like, pitchers have more injuries than most guys. So I honestly had a lot of time during my rehab, during my buildup of throwing bullpens, throwing lives, like being able to dive into my mechanics and being able to figure out what's happening with my misses and what's happening mechanically to keep me out of the zone. So I really dove in to all that stuff. And, like, honestly, it was a blessing and a curse. Like, obviously I missed some time, but, like, I just learned so much about myself as a pitcher that I'm going to take with me the rest of my career. So yeah, just really learning about what I do with my mechanics that keeps me in the zone. And then throughout my rehab starts, just figuring out, like, some of the off-speed stuff was a little inconsistent. So I almost think of my time down in Lakeland. I think I had 5 or 6 starts, kind of using that as like a spring training almost, just to kind of get back into things and get comfortable, and get all my off-speed stuff dialed in. That way, when I came up here, I was ready to go, and I think that plan's kind of worked out. So
You talk about that conservative approach, which of course, any team's going to do with their prized pitching prospect there. And, with the things that you had already shown prior to the injury, there was, so many reasons to be excited and also careful with you, but being able to be somewhat healthy or pretty much healthy, but still being in that work mode, like you mentioned, what were some of those things that really clicked for you in that opportunity where, COVID, I felt like was a really big stretch where a lot of guys had things click for them because they had no time or nothing to do other than really just hone in on their craft in a world that was kind of paused. Your baseball world was somewhat paused through that stretch of 9 months. What were some of the biggest things that clicked for you, as you kind of grew as a player during that stretch?
yeah, like I said, I've had around 9 months or so off. So usually get 5 or so months over the off season, which I had, and then I had those few extra months. So I really kind of look at it as an extended off season. So I just got a ton of time to get as prepared as I could for when I made it back. And like I mentioned earlier, I just think the biggest thing were just the mechanical adjustments and learning my body, learning what I do well, learning the bad habits that creep in when things start to go sideways a little bit, and being able to make adjustments easily. And just like going through that process, I think
Yeah.
like helped so much. That's not something I had last year. I came in right out of high school. I didn't really know much about pitching or about really anything besides the fact that I had a good arm and I would go up there and just try to compete. So
Yeah.
I think I've grown a ton, both mentally and physically. So
Yeah.
just try to keep going and continue learning, and it'll be a never ending thing throughout my career, just trying to pick apart what I did good and what I didn't do well, and just go from there each outing. So
We're going to get into the mechanics and the arsenal, and we'll get into the arsenal on this part of things as well, but on StreamYard as well, as we kind of break down some live ABs. But a lot of the listeners in this podcast, like we tend to break down the mechanics and nerd out a little bit. Maybe some people might not totally follow, but are there any like specific cues or things that you can talk about that, kind of helped you have things click mechanically? You mentioned some of the things that helped you with the consistency. What was it with you? Was it more the release point? Was it more, an earlier point in your mechanics? Was it lower half? Like, what did you feel like really clicked for you as you just learned to pitch, like you said?
yeah, there are a few things that went into this, but it all points to getting all of my energy and all my direction going towards home plate.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of guys, including myself, when I really try to gear up, you kind of tend to like pull off and fall away towards first base side. And that was something that happened to me a little bit last year, and it ends up affecting honestly all your pitches. So I realized that was going on at times, and just trying to pick apart and figure out the things that were going on that caused that to happen, and just creating drills and things like that just to keep everything connected and keep all my energy linear, was a big thing for me. And all this is stuff that I wasn't aware of last year, that I didn't understand. So like I said, going back to just how much I learned, it's made a huge difference.
It's a small sample size here, of course, because you're just getting ramped back up in comparing to last year where you had plenty more innings, but you just look at the strike rates so far this year, especially on the breaking ball. I mean, you were kind of hovering around 58% on the strike rate of the breaking ball this year. Now you're up almost over 66% on that curveball, and you've mixed in a cutter, which I'm excited to ask you about. And the changeup has been all around the zone across your entire arsenal, a strike rate just under 70%. Is there one pitch where you've really felt that kind of command hit another level as you work towards home plate and talk about the things that you just kind of had click for you? Or is it across the arsenal? Because statistically it's across the arsenal, but I didn't know if there was one pitch where you've really seen that big time gain, as you continue to roll with this new feel a little bit.
Yeah, I think honestly the slider was the difference maker. It's always like had good movement, but I feel like there were times last year where guys were able to just see it and spit on it because I wasn't able to consistently land it in the zone. I wasn't able to execute it with 2 strikes. So they, in their minds, were kind of eliminating it and then just sitting on the fastball. And now this year it's a little different when I'm able to flip over 0-0 breaking balls and even 0-1 breaking ball after that and being able to double up and things like that. It makes it a lot tougher for them to have an approach because maybe they go up there and they want to get to the fastball early, but you go slider, changeup, both for strikes, and it puts them in a hole. So it's all just pitching. It's like a chess match up there, which is so fun. But it's also a lot easier when you're able to command the strike zone.
Yeah. I'm smiling because for the StreamYard portion of this, I pulled I think half of the at-bats I pulled were ones where you doubled up on secondaries early in the count. Cause I'm just like, I want to ask him about this, but for those who, may not catch that StreamYard aspect of it or want to hear a little bit more about the arsenal breakdown, that's something I'm really interested to talk to you about too, because you mentioned how, guys will shut down, kind of eliminate that breaking ball, hunt the fastball. And last year you had the changeup kind of progressing, but I don't know if it was looking exactly like it is right now, which is you've mixed it in, around 12% of the time. But when you throw it, man, it's looked really, really good. And then you've added the cutter as well. We'll start with the changeup because I think it's an interesting one where I can't see the grip from these minor league video angles, but it does have an interesting shape and spin to it, which it's less than 2,000 RPMs. I actually texted Mike Rothenberg, who catches you in low A when you were in Lakewood, and I was like, does he throw a splitter? Like, what's the grip on that? And he's like, you got to ask him. It's like, it's unique there. Can you talk a little bit about the changeup? Like, I know it's maybe adjacent to a split grip is kind of what he said, but it's under 2,000 RPMs. Like, how do you grip that changeup? And, how have you found that consistency with it this year?
Yeah, I actually I got a ball right here, so I can actually.
Oh, let's go! Every single time I do these, I always say, "Damn it, I forgot to ask them to bring a ball." I'm so pumped that you have a ball. So let's see it.
I got them all over the place. So it is like a split change. I throw it this way. Well, I don't necessarily try to rip like through both of these fingers. I kind of try to pronate off of this finger and let it all come off. But I think from my knowledge, I think the splitting of the fingers is what creates that spin under 2,000, which is what gives it a little more depth. And then being able to pronate it and kind of give it some sideways spin helps to get a little bit of fade.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really weird grip, and it was pretty inconsistent last year. But like being able to, obviously, I talked about however many bullpens I threw during rehab, like being able to just get comfortable with that. The changeup is such a feel pitch.
Yeah.
I think it really is for everyone. I kind of get the slider and the cutter are pretty natural to me, but it's the changeup that I have to throw like pretty much every day to just have that feel for it. So yeah, it's been a great pitch for me this year. So if I can just keep that shape and that feel consistent, then I think it's going to be a good pitch for me for quite a while. Sure.
Did you have any inspiration behind that pitch? Because I love the idea, because every pitcher, most of them, there's always the lucky ones who have that changeup come easy to them. But I love the idea that the hardest pitch to consistently throw feel wise is generally the most dominant pitch once you find it. I mean, hitters, it's the hardest pitch to pick up as well. Did you have any inspiration behind that grip? Like I see some like Kevin Gosman adjacent type characteristics to it. I know he kind of holds it similarly. Was there anybody that kind of showed you that, or is that more of a generic type of grip now that's starting to take over the minor leagues? That's one area that I'm not as familiar with, as we're seeing more splitters, but I know a lot of it comes from kind of inspiration or word of mouth and maybe philosophy throughout an organization.
Yeah, for sure. There are some nasty ones out there, but for the longest time through high school, I tried to throw a circle change, and I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't. Yeah, I did. I couldn't figure it out, and so I went to that grip, which I felt like was a little easier for me. I didn't have to try to do so much out front with the formation stuff. But like when I first started throwing it, it was not very good. I didn't really throw it a ton in high school, and then I really had to figure it out last year. And it had times where it was really good, and then times where it wasn't. And then as I just kept throwing it, I just kind of started to figure out what was going on out front with the good ones versus the bad ones, and trying to continue to have that same feeling and eliminate the bad ones. So yeah, hopefully, I mean, like you said, it's such a field pitch. One day it can be there and one day it can't be. So I'm hoping that I have it for the rest of the year for sure.
Well, the last couple of starts I saw and the ones that we're going to break down, there's some damn good changeups in there, and I'm excited to talk to you about that. And you mentioned though, you hope you have it. You're not going to have it every single start for the rest of your life. I mean, I hope you do, but just pitching wise, sometimes you got to pivot. And that's why the cutter is such an interesting part of it, because that gives you another wrinkle now too. And, you know, I was reading a conversation you had with Fangraphs. It was an awesome job by, I think, David Lorilla, I believe. And, you know, you talked about how the Tigers specifically, you correct me if I'm wrong, I'm trying to remember, my reading comp has, you know, gotten washed up over the years, but it was something along the lines of wanting to kind of harp on the fastball, the slider and the changeup, but the cutter is that new pitch, but focusing on that 3-pitch mix. How has it been kind of adding that cutter to the fold? And do you feel like that gives you just another wrinkle where if the changeup's not there, I feel like the breaking ball is always there for you, but if the changeup's not there, where you can go to the cutter a bit more in those starts, or have you not really even gotten to that point yet because it's so early with those 4 pitches?
Yeah, for sure. We've had a lot of conversations about it, and I'm still, you know, I've only had X amount of starts where I've used it, so still kind of trying to figure out where it plays. But I think kind of my process this year with my arsenal, trying to keep it simple. The fastball and the slider have always been the bread and butter, so I'm trying to utilize those 2 pitches as much as I can. And then once I feel like they've shown that they can handle one of those pitches, then that's when I come in and use the changeup or use the cutter, just to kind of get them off the fastball slider sequencing. But like my catcher down here has done a great job. Like we're on the same page, game planning and having conversations like that. So it makes it easy for me. But like I said, still trying to figure it out. And I will throw it, you know, early in counts and things like that. But it also just depends on what the hitters are doing, what I feel like they're looking for, and things like that. But all part of just learning.
What's amazed me is, you know, you've only thrown about 50 of them dating back to what I'm able to track from the rehab starts, but just pounding the zone with that cutter as well. You mentioned how it comes a little bit easier. A lot of guys that kind of grip it similarly or throw it similarly to a fastball, just with the grip kind of doing the work for them. Is that what it is for you? And does it feel like it just kind of came naturally? Because this is a relatively new pitch for you. It's in the low 90s. It's got good movement to it and late movement to it. I saw that. I love the quote that you had, which was like, I don't want to compare myself to this guy, but it just the pitch shape in a vacuum, nothing else, which I really appreciated. That is similar to DeGrom. Of course, you got to take from the best. Like I wouldn't want you to say that, you know, oh, this pitch looks like a guy with a 10 ERA who pitched for 6 months in the bigs. Like that wouldn't want to be who you want to model it after. But can you explain a little bit to how that low 90s cutter can be similar to a DeGrom type and why that's, you know, what you wanted to achieve and what that achieves for you?
Yeah, so I think the whole reason behind adding the cutter for me was I had some issues last year with the big slider, landing it in the zone, and I had been able to get good movement on it, so I knew that I could supinate well. And I kind of talked with a little bit with the Tigers, and they said it was up to me whether I wanted to add that or not. And I was like, okay. And then I went into the off season and was kind of toying around with it, and it came pretty natural to me. So I stuck with it, and it's a little shorter than my slider and harder, so it's a lot easier for me to land in the zone. So that was my biggest thing um, about adding that. And then I got into looking at different types of cutters. I was looking at Walker Bueller's. I was looking at the Grom's slider. Trying to think. I think those were two of the biggest guys. You Darvish, I looked at a little bit, but I think his is a little slower. And yeah, the biggest thing for me was I wanted to throw it as hard as I could with as much break horizontally to the glove side as I could. And like I mentioned, talking to him, I don't ever want to consider myself anywhere close to being on Jacob deGrom's level, but at times our nut cutter and his slider are similar when I'm throwing it well. So it's definitely encouraging for me to see and gives me more confidence in it. But
Yeah.
you got to be able to execute it, and I still got to learn, when to throw it and where to throw it. So
Walker Bueller was a good pull. I'm not sure you would know, but he's on the Just Baseball show, our flagship podcast every Monday, and we break down his arsenal and things like that. And he was getting into the cutter and how that really was a differentiator for him too. As he works back now and actually should be making an appearance against some live batters very soon now to get back on the bump. But that cutter seems to be a differentiator for some guys that really find it, because you talked about it out shorter. You can spot it for a strike consistently and just gives you another wrinkle and another way out, especially to erase those hitters' counts. Before we wrap up and head over to StreamYard, I kind of wanted to just date backwards real quick and go all the way back to the draft, where I think it was kind of wild. We didn't really know exactly how the top few picks were going to shake out. And you end up going, as early, I think, as anybody would have thought you would went. And a lot of people were very excited about that because of exactly what we're seeing from you on the mound now. Did you have any idea how early you could go in that draft? I'm sure you had an idea that there was a chance, but when did it start to become real that you could be one of the first players selected overall in the entire draft? I mean, that's pretty impressive as a high school arm. And you talk about, all that comes with the territory of concerns and being protective over high school arms. Like, you got to be damn good to convince a team to take you that early. When did it become a reality for you that you could be, not only the first arm selected, but one of the first players selected in that draft?
yeah, I think it was like probably halfway through my senior year season when all those websites started coming out with the rankings and the mock drafts and everything. And I really had no idea. My agent or advisor at the time was really good at keeping that noise kind of away from me and just letting me focus on going out there and pitching. So it honestly came really fast to me because I started pitching relatively late. It kind of came on the scene pretty late, it seems like. So yeah, I mean, it happened really fast, and I think it was unlike I think the last person or the last high school prep pitcher to go the top 5 or whatever was Hunter Green.
Yeah.
So I knew it was going to be hard to make my way up that ladder. But yeah, I mean, I was super grateful for it, and like I said, it all just happened so fast. So I honestly was expecting it.
Number three overall, out of Oklahoma. And there's probably some other fun facts about that. When the last time Oklahoma high schooler was picked in the top 5, or I don't have that in front of me, but I'm sure there's some crazy numbers around that. You mentioned pitching later. When did you really start focusing in on just pitching?
Yeah, it was probably the summer going into my senior year.
Wow.
Junior year was the COVID year for me. And I had done a good bit of pitching work throughout quarantine. But as far as getting into games competitively, it was going into my senior year.
Wow.
And I'd always played shortstop, and that's what my dad wanted me to do. And I loved it. I was pretty decent. I'd like to think so, but pitching just came so like natural to me. So it was honestly a no-brainer when that started clicking.
Were you getting looks, obviously not to the same level, but were you getting some serious looks as a position player? And, what obviously being dominant on the mound helps make that move, pretty easy. But was there that level of like, oh, I still think I can do this, in the field too? Like I'm pretty good out here.
Yeah, I was signed to Ole Miss to be a two-way, but
Oh, nice.
I think I would have ended up definitely being a pitcher. But no, when the pitching stuff happened, I was just so far ahead of where I was as a position player with not having put even close to the amount of work in. So it was kind of like, all right, I'm just gonna accept this and roll with it.
Did you feel like that athleticism, just even being able to play shortstop at a high school level and just playing in the field like that, did you feel like that's really helped you still today? We talk about DeGrom, a guy that played shortstop at Stetson. There's a lot of really good pitchers out there that, Josiah Gray played shortstop at Lemoyne College. Like a lot of these guys that are really athletic pitchers were, guys who played in the field. You feel like that's a big part of why you're able to repeat your mechanics so well and adjust and learn so quickly.
Yeah, without a doubt, honestly. And I played a lot of football my whole life. So I think like doing anything athletic, I feel like just helps you get the body in sync, let everything work on time. And like I still every day during my catch play, I flip myself the ball. I'm throwing like I'm at shortstop. So I like to keep that same mentality. I feel like it helps you from trying to overcomplicate things within your career for sure. So
I love that. I love that. Last question for you before we jump over to StreamYard for about 15 minutes or so. What are your goals for the rest of the year? Of course, it's build up innings, keep doing what you're doing, but do you have any personal goals, personal things you're focusing on? And, for when you look back at the end of the season in a couple months here and say like, this went the way that, I wanted it to go.
Yeah, I try to think about moving levels. I try not to play GM on that end and try to just control what I can control. So I think the biggest thing for me is just keep doing what I'm doing. Like I want to continue to attack the zone. Like I don't walk guys. I think everyone can agree that walks are like one of the worst things a pitcher can do. They always seem to find a way to score. Like however it is, it seems like they always do. They want to keep striking guys out. But I think that just goes hand in hand with pounding the zone. So like I said earlier, I want to make up for some lost time. So I definitely want to dominate the rest of this year for however many starts I have left, and then just kind of go from there and see where I'm at.
Well, you're doing that. I think you're doing a great job of making up for lost time, and it's been a lot of fun to watch you on the mound, dude. Let's jump over to StreamYard. Really excited to now watch you on the mound with you here and break it down. But thanks so much for taking the time on the podcast side and the StreamYard side. And really excited to watch you the rest of this year, man. And best of luck the rest of the way.
For sure. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.